We commence this parliamentary year not with optimism, but with melancholy. We dedicate our time today not to routine business, but to solemn remembrance. In mourning the victims of the worst terrorist attack on our soil in our history, we are reminded that something is rotten in the state of Australia. The Bondi Beach massacre was also the second deadliest anti-Semitic attack outside Israel in the post-Holocaust era. And so we must be under no misapprehension as to the magnitude of what's happened in a national and international context. More than a month has passed since that day of depravity, and yet time has not dulled the feelings that gripped us in the wake of that monstrous act. There's still heart-wrenching grief for the 15 innocent and wonderful people who were murdered. There's still immeasurable gratitude for the police officers, paramedics, lifeguards, and innocent bystanders whose courage shone amidst cruelty's darkness. There's still deep concern for the survivors, for those who continue to be treated by our marvellous doctors and nurses, and for those who are living with the trauma of terrorism. And there's still profound empathy for all Australians of Jewish faith, a cherished community that continues to live in fear. There's another emotion that hasn't diminished either: anger. An anger that's both palpable and warranted. The barbaric bloodbath on Bondi Beach was a threefold tragedy. A tragedy that occurred, a tragedy that was foreseeable, a tragedy that was possibly preventable. There's a long thread connecting the Bondi Beach terrorist attack and every anti-Semitic incident on our soil, back to the weak and supine political response to the hate-filled mob that gathered on the steps of the Sydney Opera House. Consider what we've seen since the 9th of October 2023. The Caulfield riots, the storming of the Crowne Plaza, Melbourne, the doxing of Jewish creatives, encampments on university campuses right across our country, Islamist hate preachers spreading evil, an academic indoctrinating preschool children, activists unfurling banners on the roof of this very parliament, the offices of parliamentarians vandalised, homes, cars and memorials graffitied, Jewish Australians accosted on public transport, the Adass Israel synagogue firebombed, 2 nurses calling for the murder of Israelis, protesters worshipping terrorists, death cults and Iran's dictator with impunity. Almost weekly anti-Semitic marches with mobs chanting genocidal slogans, and so much more. Intolerable anti-Semitic incidents were tolerated, and that led to more intolerable anti-Semitic incidents. Perpetrators weren't held accountable, and that meant would-be perpetrators weren't deterred. Why has the disease of anti-Semitism spread through our nation? Because of weakness, inaction, and a lack of moral clarity at the highest political levels. It's been a shame that even today there still appears to be a lack of moral clarity. Today isn't about Indigenous hatred and intolerance. Today isn't about trans hatred and intolerance. What today is about is Jew hatred and intolerance. Today, of all days, is about confronting anti-Semitism. And shame on those who trivialise anti-Semitism through their false equivalents. Today, I will do what those in power have failed to do. I'll speak honestly about the sources of anti-Semitism. That's what the Bondi victims, their families, and Australians of Jewish faith deserve. Yes, the anti-Semitism we face has a neo-Nazi component, a component that's widely acknowledged. But there's other components to which the Prime Minister, in particular, must confront and be upfront about. There's a youth component, young and impressionable Australians who have imbibed lies and propaganda about Israel and have become anti-Semitic as a consequence. There's a revolutionary left component too, activists and professional protesters whose anti-Semitism goes hand in hand with other crusades, for example, spreading climate catastrophism, promoting radical trans activism and campaigning against capitalism. This revolutionary movement seeks to attack our institutions, sow division and ingrain national self-loathing as part of their war on the West. And there is an Islamist component. I don't mean the majority of Australians of Muslim faith who, like their fellow countrymen, work hard, embrace our values, and are loyal and cherished citizens. Rather, I mean an increasing number of people on our shores who subscribe to radical Islamism. Radical Islamism hasn't come out of thin air. It comes from Islam. And we need to be candid about aspects of Islamic culture. In Australia, there are some Muslims who don't believe in equality of the sexes. Some Muslims who want to establish parallel legal systems. And some Muslims who reject freedom of speech and freedom of belief. Such views are incompatible with our liberal democracy and values. It's time to speak frankly about this clash of views, undeterred by those who seek to ring-fence Islam from reasonable scrutiny by invoking Islamophobia. It's time to acknowledge that there are people on our soil who don't want to change for Australia, but who want Australia to change for them. It's time to be upfront about the failures of our immigration system. We owe these conversations to those Muslims who have embraced our way of life, who discard those elements of Islam that are incompatible with our liberal democracy, and who repudiate the extremists in their own faith. We owe these conversations to Australians of Jewish faith who are living in fear. We owe these conversations to all Australians because our country must never experience the social fragmentation that now afflicts parts of the UK and Europe. Most of all, we owe these conversations to the victims of the Bondi Beach terrorist attack who were murdered by extreme Islamists. From tragedy must come truth. From truth must come courage. Never again is now.
Lots of people with lots to say over the past day in Canberra, but many things been said over many weeks since what happened in Bondi. One person I've been looking forward to talking to, especially after her contributions today, is Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa Price, who joins us now. Senator, lovely to see you. Always good to see you. I hope you've had a nice summer. Sadly, of course, the reason you're back in Parliament early is because of the horrors just before Christmas. Your role in the condolence motion was beautiful today. Speech was incredibly powerful. People can see it on socials, but I loved that you went and listed every single anti-Semitic incident that's happened since October 7 to remind the fairies at the bottom of the garden that no, we're not talking about colonisation, we're not talking about LGBT issues, we're talking about an issue that clearly led to the deaths of Jews in Australia.
Precisely, Paul. I mean, it is really disappointing when you hear some of our representatives, parliamentarians, conflating other issues with the tragedy that we've just experienced, the loss of life, the 15 human beings, Jewish Australians who have had their lives taken away from them, to throw in other issues concerning trans people, concerning what Indigenous people have supposedly been through in this country. That all needs to be put to the side. We're dealing specifically here with anti-Semitism, with its rapid rise in our country over the last 2 years, leading to an event that many of us were completely and utterly heartbroken and shocked to learn about, but not surprised. And, we owe it to the victims of the massacre to highlight precisely what has led to this taking place. We're supposed to be smart human beings. We're supposed to learn from history to ensure that history is never repeated.
Now, what I find amazing, right, is that there will inevitably be this conversation where any suggestion of a discussion about radical Islam must not be had because it may well create a blur or confuse people about traditional Islam. Okay, can we stop this garbage, right? Radical Islam is the problem. It's a bastardisation of the faith, and we can all be adult enough. In the same way that we know the difference between a Catholic priest who may well have committed a crime and general Catholics, right? So we don't have to always get back to this asterisk every 30 seconds. We know what we're talking about, but I'm afraid, mate, that we don't have the seriousness or even the balls as a country to even get into the conversation. When literally prayer halls have been pointed at for months, but only get shut down after people die.
Yeah. Exactly right. I mean, and I know that there are definitely members of the Muslim community who are, big enough, who have a head on their shoulders and who know that we need to have this conversation because we're supporting them as well against the extremists. If we can, in a democracy such as our own in 2026, have a clear, honest conversation about radical Islamism within our country. In order to save lives into the future, in order to protect our citizens, this conversation is necessary. Now, to me, I see Albanese and his government as seeing this opportunity through this tragedy to bring forward, these hate laws, which he's now had to abandon, but. He's used this occasion to try to push forward censorship, and societies suffer if those societies are censored from having these sorts of debates, which are really important. And many of the Jewish community have said the way forward is not to diminish speech in this country, but to have more speech, to have better speech, to find solutions through this and have the hard conversations. And that is exactly what we need to do going forward. I mean, it's like being an Aboriginal woman, and I can't talk about the elements of traditional culture that is diminishing my own people and ensuring violence continues forward. I mean, there are parallels between Islam and the way women are treated in traditional culture. So we need to acknowledge these things. And we need to talk about them as a grown-up society.
Well, and can I say this too? To the establishment leadership, be part of this. Come out and don't just denounce it at press release. Explain, this is not, we join with you. Whatever we can do to have a look into the nooks and crannies, we gladly will, because we want this garbage out as well. So you mentioned there about this legislation and, again, what apparently is being negotiated behind the scenes. I just don't know how anything that can be sort of thrashed out in a couple of hours is going to result in the right place, because this stuff is so big that I want this to be a months-long process with a hearing in every single city, there is so much nuance here that just for the excuse of a deal, I don't want to rush to something on this, and not because I want to keep hate alive, but because I want to keep free speech alive. I don't think you can do this in a quick deal overnight, and it looks like that might be what happens.
Yeah, we can't do this in a quick deal overnight. And I personally feel like this whole process has been a rushed process. I would have liked to see the Royal Commission take place to understand the extent of the need in our country in order to protect our citizens before rushing ahead with any forms of legislation in our country, because, of course, there's always the unintended consequences. And that is even unclear at this stage with what's before us. And, we as the Senate, we resume at 2 p.m. tomorrow, and, we're told there's a possible guillotine will come about at about 6 p.m. Seriously, guillotining debate ensures that really there is no real debate. This is a deal between the Greens and the government. They have the numbers to push through whatever they want to push through, and this is diminishing our freedoms in our country, in Australia. And to be honest, Paul, I'm looking at it, and we've obviously had our party room meeting this afternoon, but I'm still mulling over where I sit with it all. Whether I have to cross the floor or not, I'm still yet to make my decision entirely on that. But this is a very rushed through process, and we should really have stopped to think about this and to allow the Royal Commission to take place before going ahead and making laws that our citizens have to abide by.
If anyone put a contract in front of you with less than a day's notice, you wouldn't sign it, right? That's what's happening here. Couple of hours in the morning, couple of hours in the afternoon, and then a dirty deal done, as it seems to be. Senator, vote your conscience, as always. We love you. Thank you so much.